Okay, we're going to hear some lies today from somebody who's pretty much a professional at it. Now, Lizzie Warren, the only thing she has going for her as a candidate at any level is that she has this skill of making herself look very earnest and empathetic. She's sort of like Jeremy Corbyn with a vagina, and there's no proof that she hates any certain minorities, or she hasn't cooperated with the IRA yet or anything. So she has that going for her. She has Jeremy Corbyn's gift for empathy, and that's about it. She convinces people that she's intelligent. That's also another plus that she has. So we're going to hear her talk about why tax cuts are bad. They're bad, everybody. So let's hear that.
Let me explain why Congress's corporate tax cut was a total bait and switch. So let's start out by imagining that a community held a fundraiser to support a struggling local school. And then, instead of using that money to hire more teachers or invest in new textbooks or renovate the gym, the principal decided to buy himself a yacht. That community would be pretty upset.
So we're going to get to the end of the video, and you're going to see why she picked the worst possible analogy to use in this situation. A community getting together to help a school. Well, that kind of happens all the time, especially where I live. But let's keep listening.
Right? Well, that's basically what Congress and big corporations conspired to do to America with this tax cut. Here's how it worked. Politicians promised this tax cut would result in average working Americans getting a big raise.
The more bold cut we get, the more economic growth we'll get.
Workers benefit, wages go up, more jobs occur.
More products will be made in the USA. A lot of things are going to be happening.
But instead, CEOs are mostly using the tax cuts to make themselves even richer.
We're about to run up on an ad. Sorry about that. This is on Facebook.
The individual could be a high-level target.
So
I can't go to Yemen.
Everybody, let's
get on the plane.
Fuck Amazon. Let me see here. Why is it freezing? I think it knows what it's doing.
There's something different about his agenda.
Don't put blame on me.
Yeah, watch their shitty show.
And they're doing it through totally legal process called stock buybacks. Simply put, this is when corporations buy back shares of their own company on the open market in order.
They showed a clip of one of the greatest movies of the 80s, Trading Places, by the way, just to illustrate. By the way, the moral of that movie is that capitalism is bad, yet it was made by Hollywood, which, as we all know, doesn't really distribute its own wealth very well.
In order to boost the share's value.
I think it was John Landis that made the movie. It's a fantastic movie.
You love stock buybacks. And let me explain why. Let's say you're the CEO of a small company called Wally's Widgets. The total market value of your company is $500, and there are 100 shares available to the public. Like I said, it is a small company. That means every share is worth $5, or 500 divided by 100. But let's say you use your tax savings to buy back 10 shares and take them off the market. That would mean you have only 90 shares on the market, but your market value is still $500. So when we divide that $500 by 90, we see that each share is now worth $5.55. Wow, that's an 11% increase in your stock's value. That is good news for shareholders, but it is even better news for executives. See, not only do most executives get a raise when stock prices go up, but some of them also cash in on the buybacks by selling off their own shares right as the value increases.
Get back in there at once and sell!
But if you're like most people on the planet, that is not an investor in Wally's Widgets, stock buybacks don't benefit you at all. In fact, they might actually be hurting you. You see, right now, corporate profits are high and taxes are low, so corporations are sitting on fat stacks of cash. Have they used that cash?
Fat stacks, bro.
To give their employees a raise, or create new products, or make stuff more affordable to consumers? Not so much. You want some proof? Well, since the big tax cut, S&P 500 companies have announced $157 billion in those stock buybacks, but just $5 billion in raised wages. Regulations around buybacks are so weak.
So all she does here, by the way, before we get to why the analogy is bad, is she talks about raised wages, which, by the way, there are a lot of companies that have raised wages. And if they haven't raised wages, they've hired a lot of workers. So it's two different, there's actually a number of different effects. There's raised wages, there's new hires, there is also the release of more money for research, and then there's the stock buybacks. I fail to see why Lizzie Warren has any business complaining about any of those.
Companies can effectively buy back as much stock as they want, whenever they want. And by spending so much on share buybacks, not only are companies artificially inflating the value of their stock, which is misleading to investors, they're not spending their money in ways that would be beneficial to the economy overall. When Congress tried to sell their tax cut to the American people, they promised that corporations would invest that money in ways that would benefit the entire economy. Instead, corporations bought.
Well, you've only told part of the story. You're claiming that the only effect would be that they would invest that money in their own employees' wages. You didn't talk about all the employees that have been hired. I've been hired to a company just a couple months ago. Okay, and before that, I mean, last year I was hired to a different company. And I know a lot of people who have been hired to other companies. And in my area, maybe because you live in Massachusetts, which is still a hole, and where basically you don't get any tax breaks because the place is basically a sinkhole for money due to your crazy corruption in, I don't even know where, I think their capital is in Amherst or something, Beacon Hill, I don't remember where it is. But because of all of that, maybe in your shitty state, people don't feel the effect. I feel great.
Themselves a yacht. Remember that the next time a politician promises that tax breaks for corporations will result in trickle-down wealth for you. Share this video if you're...
Yeah, somebody should trickle down over her or something. By the way, Attention, which is they're the Facebook group and media company that feature this. I wonder why they think it's appropriate to feature Elizabeth Warren when they had a video 2 years ago, which, by the way, I'm against the Native American mascots. That's my personal opinion. So 2 years ago, they made a big stink over this, too. You know, the Native American logos, which I'm against, too. I do think that they're racist. I'm not going to make people not wear it. I live in this town. I can't make people not wear these logos. Attention, for some reason, they're trying to go and say...
He doesn't hurt anybody.
You think this one's okay?
Not really, no.
Then why is this one okay?
There's nothing wrong with that.
See, this video is correct, but what are they going to do about it now that they have Lizzie Warren as one of their activists? Well, that's what you get when you have a lack of consistency. She's a person who's misrepresented herself her entire career. But this video isn't about her and her personal life and her misrepresentations of her own cultural background and her genealogy. It's about, of course, stock buybacks. And she used the analogy earlier of public schools and communities raising money for them. Now, sometimes that's voluntary. Sometimes a community comes together. They say, "Well, we're going to raise money. We're going to do bake sales. We're going to do car washes for whatever for getting new uniforms for the school softball team or the school wrestling team or whatever." That's often what will happen. Okay, then that's fine, and she's correct. But that's not the analogy here. The analogy here is that the people who are for the tax cuts are saying we're going to stop collecting taxes to the degree that we have before. So therefore, we're going to collect less money from category A, which would be for example middle class income earners. But there's other categories too. There are corporate taxpayers that the government has the right to say, well, we're going to raise or lower taxes on them. And Lizzie Warren is trying to make the point that it's really corporations that abuse the tax cuts, but that misrepresents the nature of what taxation is. Taxation basically says that we, the government, if I'm the government, I say to you, you owe me this amount of money in order to provide this schedule of services for you. So those services can include defense. They can include, certain benefits for seniors. They can include certain benefits for people with disabilities. They can include national parks, state parks, local parks even. So we're talking about at all levels of government. There's a certain schedule of services and sometimes even products that the government is supposed to provide that they say, well, you the taxpayer, you the consumer, you owe us for those services. However, in many cases, if you're going to use the analogy of a school, schools often they produce these things called levies, school districts. They'll try to pass something called a levy. And what does a levy say? It says basically we're going to add a certain percent of tax on the value of your home in the district that you live in. So they're saying this house that you already own, in fact, my house, I own this house. You own this house, and on top of the equity in your house, you're going to have to pay a certain percentage of tax. And in fact, in my district, in my county, they tried to basically double my property value within a year of me buying this house. Can you imagine that? So I'd be paying double the amount of taxes that I had the year before, and I haven't really earned much more. So is that really a fair way to to deal with the customer here? I'm the customer of the county, and they're trying to say, well, you've done nothing to justify us taking more money, but we're going to do it anyway because we think we can do more with the money than you do. Well, this happens all the time. And here you can look at the District of Columbia. It says here, this is from DC Fiscal Policy Institute. It says limited school funding can lead to the misuse of extra resources for low-income students. So I want to say this. I know that there are, in every school district, in fact, I know people who've had to take, I think it's called ELS classes, the people who need remedial studies, whether they have disabilities, learning disabilities, or physical disabilities. There is a need to take care of them. However, what this is talking about is the misallocation of funds that were supposed to go for various things that are also deemed important, and they end up going to the low-income students. So therefore, this is why people pull their kids out of local school districts. It's not me doing this. I don't have any kids, but people do. It says far too many DC students face enormous challenges, unhealthy environments, housing instability, food insecurity, caregiving responsibilities, and the stress of living paycheck to paycheck. About half of DC students currently qualify for at-risk funding because they are growing up in families struggling to make ends meet, or they are at risk of falling behind in the classroom. Both DC public schools, or DCPS, and public charter schools receive an additional $2,334 per student in local at-risk dollars. Okay, so per student, you're paying an extra $2,300. But the underfunding of schools often results in the misuse of these extra resources intended to support students facing the greatest barriers. Okay, this district needs a better blueprint for the resources required to staff every school and the resources needed to support low-income students in particular. At-risk funds were designed to promote equity, to ensure that low-income students get the same kinds of enriching opportunities and services as their higher-income peers, and to ensure that students who are struggling academically get the targeted supports they need to succeed in the classroom. These funds are supposed to help schools provide supplemental resources and expand important services for the students who need them most. So they keep, by the way, DC is one of the worst taxed districts in the area. And they even use in this study the Latin X name for Hispanic students. They could have just put Hispanic, by the way. And it shows that even with all of that, all of the levies and all of the extra taxation, white students still, they're able to score higher. They're able to score in the 85% range on these tests. And then of course, I can't believe the Asians are lower or whatever. But, I guess things happen. And then it steadily grows lower. Okay? And then you have only 59% of DCPS at-risk funds allocated to supplemental programming. So they keep collecting this money for at-risk students, and the students don't even get it. So what the fuck is the point anyway? So you're going to ask for more money in a district where basically it's impossible to open a business in Washington D.C. because the property values are so high. You can't afford the rent if you're trying to open a business there unless you're a major corporation. You know, the small businesses in D.C. are basically like finding a needle in a haystack. That's the problem with a district like that. Then you go to over here. They're failing their ethics here. It says here that, and this is from basically an NPR subsidiary from American University. It says, after struggling for decades, Washington, D.C.'s public school system became a model for educational reform, but now a series of scandals have raised questions about the state of the system. Just a few weeks after learning that 1/3 of high school seniors graduated despite failing to meet attendance or grade requirements, D.C. Schools Chancellor Antoine Wilson is in hot water for skirting ethics rules and bypassing the lottery system. So they collect all that money, yet the people don't even go to school. The kids don't even go to school. What the fuck is the point then? So you're paying money for a school that people don't even go to. The kids don't show up, and then you're spending all that money anyway. The Deputy Mayor of Education has stepped down and calls for the Chancellor to be fired or resign or mounting. So this is from, I think it was, February. So this was just this year. So this is a big deal in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C., the same city where Elizabeth Warren lives. And she wants to say that it's really the real problem is that you're giving money back to corporations. Well, I'd love to hear your argument for why when you turn over these monies to school districts, they don't get the job done either, because that was the analogy she picked at the beginning. Somewhere closer to home here, voters are voting down these school levies over here because people want a choice. This person says this is in Parma, a place on the west side here. The Parma teachers could always take a pay cut. Ohio teachers are among the best paid people in a state with a low cost of living. They also have stellar benefits packages and a great retirement system. Absolutely true. Everybody from that district is voting no. A lot of great comments, and I know people from there. A lot of great comments here. I also voted no because of the lack of fiscal accountability. Things I considered $9 million in funds never accounted. They collected the money, and then they never figured out what happened to it. He had an independent audit is off the table, so I should vote for a levy because what? And then people, and by the way, so we're not going to read through this all the way, but this was the second time in a year that they tried to pass it. So they failed this year, and it says it was exactly a year ago that residents voted down a $5.9 million increase for 10 years that, if passed, would have added $206.50 in property taxes per $100,000 of home value. So that's if you own a home of $200,000, which I think over there is not that common, but still, you would have had to pay $400 extra on top of the property taxes that you already paid for a school that keeps losing money. They don't, not losing money in that they end up, they don't turn a profit, which a school district isn't supposed to do anyway. They're losing money that you don't know where it went. Okay, and these people, they just keep trying to pass it and pass it and pass it. Over here, Cleveland schools spend 38% of 2012 levy on new administrators, most of them in schools. So you're passing a bill, you're passing a levy in order to collect more money for taxes. But in reality, to collect more money for teachers and for services. But in reality, what are these schools getting? They're getting administrators. They're getting people that basically print documents and shit like that, or fill in forms. That's really what you get when you pass a school levy. Okay, one final article, which we're not going to read through. Public schools are finally getting savvy about marketing. So really for them, the issue isn't about how to actually spend the money efficiently. The issue is how to sell the tax increase to the voters. So really, we're getting to the point where our actual school systems have become politicized. So Lizzie Warren ought to have picked something more, let's say, less corrupt, something less corrupt in order to make the case that corporate buybacks are a bad thing. Because essentially, she's saying that corporate buybacks are worse than districts collecting taxes so they can hire more administrators that basically weigh down the schools and give poorer services for students, not better services. So I wanted to make this video not too long. It's about 20 minutes now. Please let me know if you have any thoughts on this, whether your school district is experiencing this, whether you think that maybe that this is a bad analogy for a different reason, whether you think Elizabeth Warren is correct and I'm wrong, if you think that corporate buybacks are really a problem and they should be regulated, let me know. This is Bold Like a Leopard. I'll also upload this to the Razor Ray Live Wounds channel. Probably going to do a live stream on there later this week, probably Wednesday. And that's about it. Please have an awesome Sunday. I will probably not be having any more videos today. And have a great week.